Welcome to the 6 p.m. news. My name is James Blair. This is Michael Vincent. And tonight's topic,
Weather.
it's Family Guy where it's like, it's sunny.
It's got rain.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. We'll give it a couple of minutes for everybody to kind of come into the session. And then we're talking all about 2025. How are you going to set all of your goals? How you're going to build that financial plan so a year doesn't go by, you blink, it's gone, you didn't get where you want to get to.
Yeah. And it's, you know what? Everyone who I'm speaking to so far, much more positive mood than the start of 2024. It feels like there's a lot more optimism out there, and we're pretty optimistic, guys. Some might say blindly optimistic, but I actually think there's genuine optimism out there. It's good. So, without further ado, should we crack into it?
Let's go.
Cool. So, Lighthouse Financial Services, we've been around for a while. A lot of you have probably seen this before, but our kind of purpose as a company is really simple, right? And that's to help Kiwis achieve financial freedom. We've got a pretty simple equation for that, which is education plus action and a little bit of time equals financial freedom. This is just the education piece, though. Off the back of this, we're hoping, and you hear us talk about it a lot, taking action, doing stuff, right? I'm not saying you have to go out and buy, 400 townhouses in, I don't know, Christchurch or something, but any small step that you can take to better your financial future, that's what we're after tonight.
Yeah, and one of the big things is we fundamentally want results too quickly, and you have to have those good foundations, those good building blocks. If you have come here for a get-rich-quick scheme, that's actually the 7:30 webinar, the Crypto Bros webinar. So unfortunately, that's not tonight. We're going to talk a lot about those fundamentals, those real logical steps to grow your wealth, get you where you want to get to.
Cool. So our vanity slide. This has had an update for 2025, as of WeJays. So hey, look, this is just a little bit about what we've done while we know what we're talking about. We've had about 10,000 Kiwis go through these events. We work with some pretty headline brands in terms of companies, Rocket Lab, Samsung, Colliers. We can all read the slide. 95% of those people would recommend us to their friends and family. I love that 95%. The other 5%, they're probably cyclists. So, we don't want them anyway. I've got a bone to pick with cyclists today. Yeah.
Oh, and when they ride on Tamaki Drive instead of the footpath, anyway.
Yeah, three abreast. Three abreast.
Three of what?
Three abreast. Like 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to give you a lot of education, and we're not like here to sell you anything. We're here, like, what we believe is we just keep providing education, keep helping you understand what your options are. You might go off the back of this, I want to get a financial plan, I want to get a mortgage, I want to talk to an accountant, whatever it might be. Of course, that's our business. We're more than happy to help you with those things. Ravi will put some links in the chat if you want to book a time to talk to us. The reason we say book a time if you want to talk to us is because if you start to get into really specific information going in the Q&A, I'm 30, my partner's 32, here are our incomes, what should we do? We will lose our licenses. Mike is too pretty for prison, so we will not be doing that tonight.
I go well.
You'd be popular, that's for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we're in 2025. Now, for most of 2024, our message was fairly consistent, right? Which was hang on, survive till 2025. It is all going to get better next year. That doesn't mean that nothing happened in 2024, though. Ravi, take us through the highlight reel. I'm really worried about this. Oh, yeah. I remember it was
what's the name company, Ravi?
Silver Strike, CrowdStrike.
Yeah. And Microsoft was, and the whole internet went down for payments stopped working. Wild little time. Just shows how vulnerable we all are.
Yeah. And also, you really need to pick your interns when you're hiring them.
Yeah. Good message there. I think most people are aware of this. Donald Trump got reelected. The crypto market went crazy. The share market went up. There is some talk about some tariffs. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's also actually started to impact the price of money globally as well. So we've seen, Trump's style of leadership and economic policy is much more, I guess, dovish than hawkish. So we are starting to see that impact, I guess, the price of money at the moment, and it's not coming down as quick as it is as it was on the international market.
Another thing, speaking of politics, it's not in this deck, but South Korea going to martial law for a few hours, and
they're still trying to
arrest them. Trying to work it out. And who would have thought it'd be this complicated?
I know.
And I think, do you still believe AI is going to take all of our jobs, or?
No, I don't. We were kind of discussing a bit of AI before we jumped on the call. And I don't think it's quite where everyone thinks it's going to be. The interesting thing with AI last year is not just that people got exposed to it from a public kind of use perspective, but more around the impact of that on the stock market, right? And we see these trends, almost once every couple of years, right? It is .com. It is anything that has cryptocurrency attached to it. Right after that, it was anything that had, the metaverse or NFTs or blockchain attached to
The
it.
invention of the wheel back in the day.
Yeah. And then it was AI. And you see these bubbles kind of appear fairly regularly. They get overhyped, everything gets overvalued, and they drop back a bit. So we definitely saw a bit of that in the space last year.
Yeah, I wouldn't say bubble. I think it's quite similar to the tech bubble, where
So a bubble?
there's going to be winners.
It's not a bubble, but it's a bubble.
There's going to be winners. Well, I don't think AI is a bubble. I think there's going to be winners. It's just not quite clear who the winners are as the space plays out. Obviously, Nvidia is a very interesting one because I think it's 1 in 2 of their employees are a millionaire. And I think, don't quote me, 20% are worth more than $25 million.
Yeah. And the really interesting thing about emerging spaces, to James's point, is it's very hard to pick the winners, right? You could turn around and say the late 90s, early 2000s and go, the mobile phone industry, there's no way that Motorola is not going to be in that. Man, Nokia is going to be in that forever. When actually, if you look at the big players now, they almost have nothing to do with the market, right? So when we're talking about investing over the long term, these are the things you got to watch out for.
This bloke, this guy's a gangster. So the Paris Olympics happened. We had this, where was he from? Turkey, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Turkey, with that just kind of nonchalant shooting style.
Yeah, I know. Ravi, I don't know what you want me to say about this. I don't even remember the Paris Olympics.
What about Raygun? There's no reference to Raygun.
Yeah,
Raygun was probably the even bigger deal.
Yeah.
We've still got hope of making it to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the last one, this is my boy Cooper. He figured out a magnifying glass this year. Has he figured it out, Mike?
I don't know. We'll see. He actually made an appearance on the podcast as well.
Yeah. He's got his dad's looks.
Cool. Right. So that's our wrap up for 2024 in terms of some of the highlights that happened. Now, on to the more serious financial stuff. Look, interest rates in 2024. Up until 2024, it had been a real slog in terms of repaying your mortgage, cash flow pressure on households, and we started to see some relief. Towards the back end of the year, the reserve banks did what they said they wouldn't do, which is quite like them, and started dropping rates, which is a great surprise. And they've continued to drop rates. Now, forecasted into 2025, we reasonably expect another 50 basis point cut, although that might be a little bit off the cards now, and then 25 basis point cuts from here on out. When I say that to people, the next question they ask me is, that's great, Mike. What do you think the 6-month or 1-year rate is going to be in 5 months? I can't tell you. Anyone who can guess on that, anyone who predicts that short term is just guessing.
Yeah, definitely happened a lot faster than we were thinking. November would be the first one that came in August.
Yeah, about then.
Yeah. House prices. At the start of the year, I thought house prices would probably do something before the end of the year, but obviously there's just a lot of people carrying a lot of debt, redundancies, high interest rates passed on to businesses. Business confidence was low. Unemployment, it didn't really it rose a little bit, but I certainly feel in that kind of white collar space. We talked to a hell of a lot of people where they were being made redundant, and everything's just taking longer than we.
It is.
It did.
That is correct. However, house values on CoreLogic and Velocity, most houses, especially in the major city centers, had a bump at the end of the year. I was looking at a house in Parnell for a customer yesterday. That rose 30K in the last month, in the last 5 weeks. So we are starting to see some more green shoots in the housing market. I don't anticipate that house prices are going to run off again like they have in previous years. We have more restrictions on lending in terms of debt to income ratios, as well as other tools to try and limit the amount of borrowing that people can take out. So I don't think we're going to see these 15, 20%, kind of returns. But I think I predicted 10% for this year.
Yeah. I would go 1 to 2% for the first half of the year and 5% in the second half of the year.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. But I tell you what was a great story. The share market, and particularly US shares, not so much in New Zealand, the share market went berserk again, increasing like another 25%. I think over the last 5 years, S&P 500's up 90, 100%, something crazy like that. A lot of it backed up by the Magnificent Seven, Nvidia being a big part of that. Share market did really, really well. Now, the obvious part off the back of that is going, what's going to happen next? I don't think that's sustainable at all. I think there's probably some other parts of the world that do become more attractive. But you would have noticed it in your KiwiSaver balances, assuming that you had a decent exposure to growth assets, decent bumps in those.
Nice.
So the question is, Mike, okay, we had a bit of a laugh. We talked about what happened in hindsight, maybe some thoughts about what might happen next. The question is, what should people do?
Yeah, look, so when we are talking about your financial future and how you make decisions, everything we've just talked about are short-term events, and that would be reactionary decision making, right? And that is not what gets you to financial freedom. What gets you to financial freedom is having long-term strategies, plans, and then sticking to those plans until such time as something changes, then you readjust the plan and you stick to that. That is how you make long-term financial decisions that get you to your goals.
Yeah, because if you go in like, what's going to happen this year, if you are or are not going to do something because of where interest rates are, where house prices are, where the share market is, you are 100% playing the wrong game. It's not about what's going to happen over a year. It's about what's going to happen over a decade and what's the right thing for you. So this is our blueprint for financial success, which we're going to go through slide by slide. This is what I do in the wealth team every single day. Finances are fundamentally very straightforward. You have to earn money. You have to spend money. There needs to be some money left over that we can do something with. Your income is your greatest wealth creation asset. So if you have, sometimes people come to me for a financial plan. If your income's not at a certain level, there's only so much you can drop your expenses. So one thing in your plan might be about how do I build a plan to get to my income to a certain level, or talking to my boss, or what is the thing that I'm going to do that's realistic? Then a lot of people do earn good money, but what do, Mike?
Spend it all.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about budgeting tonight. We're going to talk about how to set up your expenses. You might go, that sounds boring, but if you do not have capital deploy a surplus from your income over and over, that's just not going to work. Then we're going to talk about getting onto the property ladder. We're going to talk about investment property versus shares. And probably the biggest thing at all is money is really just a tool. Nobody wants to start businesses, buy property, invest into shares. They want what that can give them in the future. And fundamentally, there's only two things you can do with money. You can spend it now, or you can spend it later. And that's coming down to your goals. So it's about working through those goals. If you've got a spouse or a partner, making sure you get on the same page, because obviously a lot of divorces happen over money, making sure you get on the same page, that you've got a clear set of goals that you're working towards, and then we have to execute them.
Yeah, 100%. Side note on that, 2024, I reckon towards the back end, I was having 2 discussions per week about couples splitting up. And like buying each other houses and stuff. It was very bizarre.
I thought you were going to say discussions about commercial property.
No, I've heard a lot of that. Yeah.
Cool. So I did allude to it just before, but when it comes to financial planning, it's not just about what makes you the most money. It's about going, what are we trying to achieve now, and what are we trying to achieve in the future? We need to be thinking like, you could, the best thing financially for you to do is to live in the smallest, shittiest house possible, buy a bunch of property, invest in a bunch of shares, but you're going to be miserable. You're not spending money, you're not going on any holidays, you're not having any fun. You're going to, we all know that person who was Scrooge McDuck, got really old, died, didn't get to use any of the money. So when we talk about financial planning, there's really only 4 goals that our clients have. The first one's their home. Do you want to rent? Do you want to own the home you want to live in? Do you want to rent this? Do you need to do renovations on your home? What is the strategy? How are we going to get there? What is the cost? What is the time frame? Making sure we've got smart goals. The second one is your current lifestyle. What is your income? What is your expenses? What's left over? Are we happy with that lifestyle? What are we going to go and do? The third is financial freedom. So do you want to why are we doing this all? If we're sacrificing now, do we want an early retirement? Are we happy working till 65 but want to enjoy ourselves as we go? Do we want to reduce our hours? Do we want to have a family and somebody to not work? Or like, what is the plan we're trying to work towards? And then the last one is around the kids. So a lot of people want to help with, there's daycare costs, there's first homes, there's university fees, there might be private schooling. What are all of those components? And then you need to write numbers behind all of those, when they're going to happen. And then it becomes very easy to reverse engineer the whole thing and going, okay, Mike, I'm going to retire with $3 million at age 55. I got nothing now. That's too overwhelming. The question is, what is the smallest first step I can take? And it might be, saving $100 a month or setting the budget or what are those small steps that we can build on?
Yeah, 100%. And we've kind of put this as our approach to financial planning is a bit of a seesaw, right? And part of that is, it's always a balancing act between present you and future you, right? And to James's point before, the budget, the goals, everything has to be sustainable. We say this all the time. If you just eat chicken, broccoli, and rice every day forever, you're not going to last forever. You'll blow out and have an entire sales pizza. That is why when we're looking at these plans, they are a seesaw, right? You've got to make sure that present you doesn't take up too much and leaves kind of future you face down in the mud.
Yeah, how was that trip to Mexico?
Yeah, it was expensive. Cool. So budgeting. Now, everyone has a different way of talking about budgeting. And I haven't seen a whole lot of people drop off the call as they brought up the budgeting slide. So, that's a great start. No one likes talking about budgeting. It gets a really bad rap because everyone thinks it's like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Effectively, budgeting is not saying you can't do things. It's basically if I annualized all of your expenses and said, cool, over the past year, you spent $10,000 going out to dinner, you spent 20 grand on rent, you spent this on this, this on this, and this and this, and you're still achieving your goals. Are you happy with that? If you're not achieving your goals, obviously we need to adjust the budget. If you're not happy with the budget, we need to adjust the budget. And to James's point at the top of the webinar, it's very simple. You have income coming in, expenses going out, you've got to have a little bit of fun, and you've got your savings. The issue is that people do it in that order, right? Where actually you have your income coming in, you have your expenses going out. I mean, fixed expenses, not expenses at the pub. That is not an expense. Your fixed expense, your rent, power, water, etc. Then you have your savings, and that has to be tied to a goal. Otherwise, if you're saving for nothing, you'll blow it all the time.
Yeah.
And then you have the fun, right? So it does have to be sustainable. You do have a little bit of fun in there.
Yeah. And you can do this in a way that like you automate it all, you make it really, really easy for you. But it's really just about structure and making sure Mike is right. If you're not working towards anything, it's very hard to stick to.
Yeah. And now we have a really simple approach to this. I actually do this with my own money. We have what we call the mason jar approach, right? And this is how I have it structured, all at the same bank. I just have different accounts for different things. I don't have 400 accounts. This is for the Netflix expense, and this is for this, and this is for Hulu. That's not sustainable either. So effectively, the way we do it is we go, cool, we've got 4 pots of money, and this is how we allocate the cash, right? So the first thing that comes in is we've got our fixed expenses. You've got to know what those fixed expenses are. There is no point in starting a budget and going, I think I spend about this. Maybe it's about that. Actually, here's how much I'm going to throw on my fixed expenses. You need to do an audit. It is the start of the year. I know everyone's just gone out and joined a gym. So take the same approach to this. Sit down and audit your expenses. And there's some really good software that can do that for you.
Yeah. And don't look at December's expenses. That would make you sad. It's actually funny how often we do a financial plan, people being like, I've just spent 3 weeks in Europe. Like, that's not me. I'm a different person.
Every single person I speak to says, look, the last 3 months, it's not how I usually spend. It's been a little bit bad. I'm like, and I said the same thing. I'm like, everyone says that. Do not worry about it.
Yeah. But fundamentally, if you earn $1 million a year and you spend $1 million a year, you're just going to be on the treadmill of life forever. This is really important fundamentals to get right.
Yeah. After we have the fixed expenses, we then you got to go back a slide, Ravi. Thanks, mate. Wasn't finished. After you have those fixed expenses, you should have an emergency fund in place. Now, this is usually 3 to 6 months of expenses that you have sitting in the bank. This is not in some type of investment fund. This is not sitting in crypto. This is not sitting in shares. You are not trying to make money off of this. Yep, don't get me wrong. If the bank gives you 0.0025% on your savings account, rock and roll. It doesn't matter. This is money that when things go wrong, and I said when, not if, because they do go wrong, you can break glass, get the cash, and go fix the problem, right? Cars breaking down, laptops breaking, got to go overseas for a holiday. All of these things do happen more regularly than you think. You do not want to be relying on short-term debt to fix these problems, because remember, when things go wrong, very seldom do they go wrong in isolation. So if one thing goes wrong and you go, oh, you know what? I can put it on the credit card and it would be fine. No. Usually it's a couple of things that happen, and that's how people get stuck. That's how they get in trouble. So you've got to have this emergency fund. After that, we've got our savings fund. So again, you've got your goals. And this is a savings account where you have your goals mapped out. So I am saving this much money for this thing. Might be to buy a house, buy a new car, whatever it is.
Pay off a credit card.
Pay off a credit card. And that is where the money goes. Now, again, for me, this doesn't have to necessarily be a savings account because I have a whopping great mortgage. So what I do is instead of saving it, is I pay off extra out of my mortgage, right? And that's a winning strategy because you will always be paying more on your mortgage than you will be getting in your savings account because that's how banking works.
Yeah. And then you need to go, okay, I've got that amount going towards the savings fund. Is that enough to achieve the goal? And if it is, then that's great. If it's not, the psychology of money is really important. You want to build a healthy relationship with money where you feel like you're winning. Those goals you've written down for 2025, you're going to get to 2026 if you don't achieve them and go, oh, why do I do this anyway? Why do I bother? So you just want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success and goes, does 1 + 1 = 2 for me?
Yeah. Last one is that fun fund. Guys, you've got to have some sustainability. But again, you cannot be dipping into your savings fund if the fund runs out. That is not how you do it. Tip for young players, if you ever go to a resort, go all-inclusive. Otherwise, that fund will get blown to pieces really quickly.
Yep. And as the boomers like to say, if you just eased up on the avocado on toast, you'd have a house by now.
Cool. So debt. Now, when we're going through a mortgage application, when we're talking to our customers, there are different types of debt that we give advice on, right? And there is bad debt and there is good debt. Now, not everything fits into one category all the time, right? So look, bad debt. You'll see here that I've got owner-occupied mortgage written down. Now, you might be going, Mike, how is that bad debt? I've bought myself a house. It's the Kiwi dream. That's what everyone does. You've got to take out the mortgage. 100%. That debt, though, should not be hanging around for 30 years, right? You should be paying that off as quick as you can. It is good debt. The moment you get an investment property or a mortgage for an investment property, that owner-occupied debt becomes bad debt. You are not making money off of that debt. Yep, on paper, don't get me wrong, house value goes up, you get a little bit richer. It doesn't mean anything, right? Until you sell the property, move out, do something, you can't actually utilize that equity.
You just have to pay it off.
Exactly. And people stretch these mortgages out for 30 plus years, right? So again, it is bad debt to a degree. Credit cards and Afterpay, I don't even need to explain these, guys. If you have a credit card or an Afterpay that is carrying a balance from month to month, please make that your primary goal. Here's the easy bit. I'll set a goal for you. I'm going to pay it off within X months. And that might not be 1 month. It might not be 2 months. It might take you 5 months. It doesn't matter. This should be the primary thing that you are looking to chop down.
And if you have like shares or some sort of investments and these car loans, credit cards, it doesn't make any sense. Mathematically, it is an incredibly flawed approach. And that's because, say, like you're paying a credit card rate of 23% with no taxes, no fees, no inflation. You're making 10% in shares. If you're lucky, you take off tax, fees are at 9, tax you're at 6, inflation you're at 3 because you're not spending the money now. You are way better off to focus on paying down that credit card and that car loan.
Yeah. And I know it feels better to have money sitting in shares because you're like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm investing for my future. Investing for your future, selling those shares and paying off that credit card debt. That is not personalized financial advice. Cool. Car loans, guys. Sometimes you need a car. Sometimes you've got to take out a loan. Yep. Sometimes you have to do it. However, that is bad debt. If you've gone out and bought, I don't know, a Porsche or something on tick, you should be paying that one down as quick as you can. Anything that is a luxury good should not be on finance. Right. There's my rant about bad debt. Good debt. Guys, this is everything we're making money off, right? So investment property loans, business debt, they're effectively the same thing. You're getting a return on the investment or on the capital, the debt that you've deployed. This is good debt. This is what we should be aiming for. This is the debt we keep around. Student loans, good debt. You're investing in yourself, right? We talk often about upskilling and trying to find more income, right? Because often the income piece needs to be worked on before you can get to the other bits. That's just a fact of life for some people. Upskilling yourself is a great way to do that. The reason I've got a star next to it is if you've gone out and got a triple doctorate in fine arts, philosophy, I don't know.
Look at them all falling off the call. They're all leaving.
Astrology or something, that is not good debt, right? Being a professional student very rarely pays off. So again, and this is to my point, car loans can sometimes be good, not often. Student loans can often be, car loans can often be bad. Sometimes they can be good, but not very often. Student loans can often be good. Sometimes they can be bad as well, but not very
And the same with investment mortgages and business debt. You think about all the people that took on investment mortgages at 2% interest rates, didn't think about them going to 7% and really, really bled. And the same, you got a bad business plan, your business fails and you got a debt to pay off on top. That's not particularly fun. The most important thing is the education around these tools and not being scared of things, understanding how you can utilize them in your favor. But if you do utilize them, go, well, the people that do get in pain, how do they get in pain? And how can I make sure I'm not one of them?
Yeah. Cool. Getting debt free. So when we're looking at these owner occupied mortgages, it is very rare that I will give someone the advice that they should not pay off the debt as quick as possible. There are some instances where that is applicable. Very rarely is it, right? So here's an illustration of getting debt free quicker and actually what it can mean. Because remember, this debt is over 30 years. Humans don't think over 30 years. Humans think over 1 week, 1 month, 1 year tops. It's kind of naturally what we're designed to think about.
What am I having for breakfast?
Exactly. It's really difficult to think about the small incremental changes and what they can mean over a long period of time. That's how the bank gets you with the bank fees. So let's say we've got a 600K mortgage, 6% long-term average interest rate of a 30-year term, minimum weekly payment, $830. Doesn't seem too bad for some people, might be for some. If you contributed an extra $200 a week over the same time period, you would pay that off 11 years faster. You might be going, Mike, that's great. I can see the slide. I can do the math. But again, what does that actually mean? Now, after 30 years, if you stuck to those minimum repayments, hey, what? You've paid off your house. Congratulations. You have a debt-free home. That's fine. Now, if you contributed that extra money, you paid off, you paid off that loan 11 years earlier. And then let's say after year 20, just for argument's sake, you took those same repayments and you invested it. You would, after 10 years, you would have $503,000. So what that means is it's not about just repaying the loan off earlier. It's about what can we then do with that money to set you up for retirement.
And another really easy hack is as your mortgages start to roll off, the interest rate is going to be lower. And your old mortgage broker over here is going to be like, hey, why don't we just set it at the minimum repayment? Why don't we make it a little bit easier? But if you can keep those repayments at the 7% or even higher in terms of, you're paying more and more principal, you're going to get in a position. And this just shows the person who's passive after 30 years, they got a debt-free home, which isn't a bad thing. But the person who just does that little bit more has an extra 650 grand inflation adjusted by, at the same point. And this isn't even including, Mike, which we'll get to in a second. You pay down some debt, you buy an investment property, you pay down a bit more debt, you buy another investment property, you start contributing to some funds, you got some KiwiSaver over there, you're in a stronger financial position so you can take advantage of this opportunity. It's like a snowball.
It is like a snowball. So one of the things I want to illustrate as we jump onto the next slide is if you are looking at these numbers and going, I can't contribute an additional $200 a week or a fortnight or whatever the amount is, that's not what we're getting at. The principle is what we're trying to instill here. If it's $10 a week, if it's $20 a week, if it's $50 a week, that's really what we're trying to get across here is small, consistent steps over time build wealth. James just said it. Wealth is like a snowball, right? Start small and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Again, it's difficult for people to think over such long periods of time, and that's what catches people out.
And if I really wanted to trigger some people, if you were like, cost of living crisis is high, I'm not getting pay rises. None of this applies to me. That's a poor mindset. And your position's not going to improve. You need to focus on the things within your control now. And as things change, inflation's not going to stay high. We've seen it coming down. The economy is going to change. Opportunities are going to arise. And you need to be thinking about how you can take advantage of that as the world changes.
I don't know what you're going to say there. Like, I'm going to trigger some people. Like, we have to have a fight in the car park after some people.
The other thing I'd say is you thought there was going to be another slide in that pack, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. All right, moving on. So the other thing that people talk to us all the time is, boys, what's the right time for me to take a punt on the market? I want to make a bit of money. And people think about things over such short periods of time. So we've got a study that was done from the year 2000, Sydney Olympics.
I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the year 2050 is close.
I went and watched judo and track, and I'm pretty sure, though I might be making this memory up, I'm pretty sure I was there on the day that Kathy Freeman got disqualified from the walk. She was coming into the stadium. She was first, and she was doing the walking, and she lifted her foot.
Kathy Freeman's the sprinter. She's not the walker.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, she had the mean forehead.
Someone got disqualified.
Yeah. But the year 2050 is now closer than the year 2000, which is very, very concerning. So 2020, you have $2,000 to invest into the market each year. We're going to say the S&P 500 to keep it nice and easy. Now, there's 5 different investing styles. We're going to see how they perform over a period of time that you can then think, how do you apply that to your situation? So, Mike, let's go one for one.
Right, let's go look for look. So, first one, Peter Perfect. He has incredible skill. It's totally impossible, but invest on the best day every year. Absolutely nails it. Puts his whole $2,000 into the market at the lowest closing point.
Ashley Action, probably quite similar to you and I would say, Mike, does not like to muck around, does not like to think about the first day every year the market is open. There's my 2 Gs.
Cool. Matthew Monthly. Probably, takes a little bit more of an approach to it where he thinks about it and goes, I'm going to divide this up into equal allotments and spread it out over the year. First day of the month. That's called dollar cost averaging. It's kind of what you do with your KiwiSaver by default.
Definitely an accountant. Rosie Rotten. Oh, poor Rosie. She's picked the worst time to invest every year. If you want a comparison, I'd say it'd be like buying a property in late 2021.
Cool. Larry Linger. So left all his money in cash and investments, never got around to investing. He's an engineer. Always another spreadsheet, always a better option.
There is always a better option.
Yeah. Cool. So in terms of, do we have a poll, Ravi? Yeah, cool.
Oh.
Righty. So please put in who you think performed best in terms of their investing style. Now, I'm going to hold off saying it for a second, but we often ask this question to groups we are presenting to, and we usually get the same answer. Now, James, is it a trick question?
It is not a trick question.
So let's see what the results are.
Ravi, spin up the results.
Okay. And then they've done it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So look, 59% of you have said that Matthew Monthly has the best performance. 35% of you got it correct. It is Peter Perfect. It is not a trick question. If you are a perfect investor, you will have the best performance. However, that is not the full story, right? We know that Peter Perfect is going to have the perfect returns. Okay, not a problem. Investing immediately? Yep, not far behind. Just taking action, getting it done, right? That's why we're always talking about taking action. Now, again, that's not too far behind, but kind of makes sense. Dollar cost averaging is very close to investing immediately because they're effectively doing the same thing. Your dollar cost averaging over a year or over a month. That's why there's not too much difference there. None of that is particularly interesting. What is interesting is to the right-hand side of that.
So bad timing. Rosie Rotten picked the worst time to invest 20 years in a row. She's only $30,000 behind Peter Perfect. Now, we're looking at those that have invested in property over the past few years, and they're going, I made a horrible decision. Yep. I'm in lots of pain. I would argue you didn't make a bad decision. You just have not looked at it over a long enough period of time. Mike, you've got a great analogy about thinking about buying a property in like the 1980s.
Oh, yeah. So look, that's funny. I was like, oh, you reminded me of that. I should say that. Yeah, look, so if you think about it, right, if you go, people who invested in property in 2021, right at the height of the market, they are probably looking at that going, I've made a terrible decision. People also often ask me, when is the right time to get in? Should I get in now? Should it be the next 3 months? Should it be the next 6 months? When is the right time? Now, are you all right? Sorry. Anyway, let's say your granddad bought a property just off Ponsonby Road, which was a bit of a slum back in the day for, I don't know, $3,000. Do you think it really mattered if they waited another 3 months for that price to drop down to, I don't know, $2,700? It doesn't matter. Over a long enough time frame, poor investment decisions or most investment decisions are fixed. And again, humans think over 1 year, 1 month, 1 week. These are long-term assets that you're holding on to, right? So it doesn't matter if you got in now, yesterday, the next month. The point is you're in the market.
Yeah, and if you go $3,000 for a house that's not comparable, maybe that's a little bit low. But you've just got to remember, like, if you go from 2000 to 2025 and then go 2025 to 2050, $1 million house is going to go to $2 million over 10 years, and then $4 million over 20 years.
I think that's a little bit low. I was talking to my granddad over the Christmas break, and he bought a block of land for £150.
There you go.
Back in the day.
So he
could have bought a property on Ponsonby Road, and then it cost him more to get it through the courts. It cost him £300 to get it through the courts. So he paid more to actually settle the property than he did to buy it.
Anywho, that definitely doesn't happen anymore. So properties do double every 10 years, and it's very hard to go like a $1 million house going to be worth $4 million in 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, first point, yes, quite a bit of that is inflation. That's very, very valid. But you just got to remember, and this is a really important point, which we could talk about forever, the debt associated is not moving with inflation, right? You are locking your debt in at that point in time. And as your income continues to increase, it becomes easier and easier to service that debt.
Imagine if my granddad put that on interest only and left it. Even if you have 50, imagine if you financed it at £50, $100 on a giant property in the far north. Anyway. Righty, so shares, property. I mean, this is where we don't really disagree on this. I mean, we're sitting on the right side. I'm team property, of course. Your team shares.
Yeah, I need to move the slides the other way around.
Yeah, Jimmy, take it away.
Yeah, so people always go, shares, property. What's the right outcome? So we're going to run through some numbers. So let's say we've got $140,000 to invest. And I go, invest into this growth fund, nice and diversified, a few New Zealand shares, Australian shares, bit of US, couple of bonds, a little bit of property, beautiful. Provide a 6% net return after fees and tax.
Yawn. Anyway, look, and then on team property over here, I go, cool, we got 140 grand. I can probably get you a 700K property with a 5% real return. We'll take off 15K for a cost per year. Let's see how we stack up if we go pound for pound. Now, effectively, the return on a per annum basis, James, the numbers are there. What are you going to say?
Yeah, look, I mean, so this might make you go, these guys are just trying to shill properties. Mike's a mortgage broker. You're 100% correct.
I am.
Now, your boy over here in Switzerland, granted, property is creating a higher return. And that's not because property is special. It's because the ability to leverage, the ability to get a mortgage with a small amount of money, keep all of the gains. Now, that does not mean that property is the right thing for everybody. Let me quickly run you through it. It's fundamentally very, very straightforward. Shares are great when you want income, when you're at a point where you want some liquidity, you want some cash flow. Property in lots of situations, most situations, will make you rich on paper. So when you've got an income, when you're working, that's great. It's growing on paper. But will fundamentally, after the mortgage or the cost, tax will provide you with a very, very poor income. So what we usually do is people have investment property while they are working, and then we pivot them to shares when they need to start getting an income.
Yeah, there's no one asset that is correct for everybody. And yeah, while I'm a mortgage broker and I shill debt and properties all day long, there are some instances definitely where property is not the right asset. And what we find really interesting is people who build up a large property portfolio and then come to us for advice a little bit later on in their life, go, hey, guys, I've got this portfolio. I can't get any cash. What am I going to do? And we go, yeah, it's really easy, mate. Sell 2 houses, chuck it in a fund. You can you can kind of drip feed the money down as you need it. You'll still get a return on it, so it won't disappear straight away. And you can kind of just keep doing that and hang on to some bits of your property. And they look at James and they go, nah,
Can't touch it.
can't touch it.
Keep your hands to yourself, Gary.
Yeah, because they they hang on to these assets and they look at it and they go, it's worked really well for me in the past. So I'm not going to change what I'm doing. Right. And again, this is why having a plan is really important. If you have a financial plan and you know your goal, not just I want to buy a whole lot of property, I want to buy an asset that gives me the opportunity to do something at this point in my life. It is a much more fulfilling end and an easier conversation and an easier time when you go, I'm going to sell some of these assets now because they are just an asset to get me to a point I want to get to, not I am the dragon out of Lord of the Rings sitting on hordes of gold forever and I never do anything with it.
Do you know who retaining property in retirement works really well for? The kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So here's a quick kind of breakdown on leverage and how we use it in the mortgage space and how we use it to grow a property portfolio. Now, generally when people are starting out, they start out with an owner-occupied property, right? There's kind of what you do. Some people do buy investment properties and keep renting, but for most people, this is the path they go on. And it's really difficult when people are constantly talking about, I've got this much property portfolio, I'm on Instagram doing this, I've got this, I got this. You can get there. It just takes a little bit of time. This is not an overnight thing. So effectively, let's say I've gone out and bought a house for $1 million. I can lend 80% of the value of that house. Easy math. That's 800,000. Now, let's say I've bought that a few years ago and I've paid that down to 600,000. I can lend 800,000. I only owe 600,000. That $200,000 difference there, that's what we call usable equity. Where people get a little bit messed up here is they go, house is worth $1 million, the mortgage is worth 600,000, I've got 400,000 to use. That's not really how it works. It's that usable equity is how much you can lend versus the mortgage.
The other thing people get messed up with is going, I have a $600,000 mortgage. I have to pay off the mortgage. And then once I've got rid of my mortgage, then I can get an investment property.
So what we do is we take that $200,000 and we use that as equity or security to then buy the next property, right? So let's say we've got 200,000 here and you want to go out and buy another property. You know, you could probably go out and you would have enough equity to effectively go out and buy another $1 million property. And there is a whole lot of rules around this, LVR rules, equity rules, you got to be able to afford it. But fundamentally, it is about pooling your assets together and using some of the spare value in the assets as security to go buy the next one.
Yeah. And then when it comes to property as well, there's lots of different ways you can go in terms of investment property. And the beautiful thing about lots of things in life, which is why, we're lucky enough to have jobs, is it's not there's one that's better than the other. You can buy new build townhouses because you're really time poor and you don't want anything complicated. You can work with somebody like, say, Ilsa Wolf on the property coaching side and find something, add some value to it, get some capital gains, get the rent up. Or you might go towards commercial property, which has got kind of good capital gains, good kind of cash flow. Now, you might go, well, you guys said you made $1 million doing all these properties online. That sounds nice and easy. A lot of it's around execution risk, how you want to spend your time. Commercial property. I talked to a guy today who was all about when you buy an industrial property. He had no other property.
Yeah.
If it was vacant, he'd be completely screwed.
Yeah.
So it's the right tool at the right stage. And you might try and build to get to a certain tool, but where are you right now?
Yeah. And it's really important that when you're getting this advice, you're getting it from, the right sources. Just be careful about who's got what kind of vested interest in the advice that they're giving you. But I think one of the really important things is, if you do have questions, you're already on the webinar, so you're taking action to educate yourself. Reach out and ask questions. I had someone over the break asking me about they're thinking about changing properties. So they've got an apartment style property and they're thinking about selling that and moving into kind of a house effectively, what we call a grounded security. And that's a really interesting discussion for me because they've taken the right step by getting on the property ladder. And then we go, how do we tweak it slightly to just make that investment slightly better, right? And, naturally speaking, a house, a grounded security has much better returns over time.
Cool. Now I'm conscious of the time. What people really skip over is around protecting their wealth. So they focus on all the fun stuff, which is investing in shares, buying properties, setting goals, doing projections. Just really quickly, it's really important to have an emergency fund. Mike spoke about before. Things will go wrong in life. If you do not have money set aside, you might have to sell assets, not be able to work. Things can go really, really bad. If you've got short-term goals, make sure to leave that money in cash It's not fun, but the money will be there when you need it, opposed to if you invest it and it disappears. I'd probably say 1 in 2 people don't have a will. Get a will if you've got assets and there's people you care about. And when it comes to insurance, we are very underinsured in New Zealand. If you are dependent on your income, that most people are, you should have income protection, because most people tend to be screwed if they don't have income protection. And if you have people who are dependent on your income, you should have life insurance. We'll pop a link to book a time with an insurance advisor if you want to have a chat or a review. Some people, like this insurance advisor, will just sell you lots of stuff and not really care about you. Some insurance is better than no insurance. You just work it out to make it fit your budget.
Yeah, we're getting towards the end of the slides. If you have questions, start chucking them in. This slide is the things basically that people keep putting to the bottom of the list, right? You go, I've got this list of stuff to do. I'll get a will. Actually, I want to do something else, right? And it goes to the bottom of the list. For me at the moment, the insurance piece is really front of mind. I had a really tough conversation with a customer yesterday who is absolutely nailing everything. And, we're talking about plans for future and stuff. And then at the end, he's like, actually, you know what? I've got to start cancer treatment tomorrow. I've got, lymph node cancer throughout my body. And it's pretty bad, right? And just, you have these discussions, you think about the insurance and you go, oh, man, they're not great discussions for us to have with customers. So please, please, please take out some insurance.
You can't fix it in hindsight. And you might be like, Mike's trying to scare me to get insurance. Absolutely, we are, because it's the only way to ever convince anybody to get some insurance.
Yeah.
Cool. And the big thing with a plan is, look, it's good to have a plan. The way I describe a plan is you will get with a good plan from here to here. The way you get there will look different because life happens. A lot of people have a financial advisor because of the accountability component. They know what they need to do. They just don't do it. Kind of the same as a nutritionist or a personal trainer or whatever it might be. And the other thing I'd say is, people beat themselves up as well for not getting where they want to get to fast enough. Last year, a lot of it was not about making these really big moves. It was about holding on and not doing something really stupid. You'll have seasons where you need to pull the trigger and you need to take action. But there's also times, a perfect one is when you have kids, where it's not about running 1,000 miles an hour or something really hard. A lot of people got made redundant last year. It changes everything. So you just need to be kept accountable, keep in the right mindset and be flexible and think about the big picture.
100%.
Cool. So we put the links in at the start. So like what we have spoken about today is what we do every day on the financial planning side. A financial plan is not for everybody. We charge a fee for a financial plan. I think that's a great thing because we're not trying to just shill you product. So we charge $3,000 plus GST for a financial plan. So really a financial plan is probably for somebody with like a household income, maybe of a couple $100,000 or quite a bit of equity in their home or quite a bit of cash. If you are in that situation and you want to talk about goal setting, financial projections, playing out different scenarios, debt repayment, investment property, investing in shares, KiwiSaver, really the whole thing, and then executing it, book a time with one of the team. They can have like an initial 30-minute chat and work out whether a plan's right for you.
Now, this is a little bit, because you're like, we charge a fee. We're not just trying to shill your products. We don't charge a fee. We're shilling your products. No.
It's called money.
Yeah. Hey, look, so if you want to have a chat to the mortgage team, obviously we've got everything here. Really interesting time in the market at the moment where house prices are just starting to kick up a little bit. So I would say, it's all but certain we've seen the bottom of the market. Unless there's some black swan event, and house prices are starting to tick up again. If you are thinking about making a move in the property market, now is the time to do it. And I've got to be really careful about how much I encourage people to do things. I'm giving advice. I'm not here to drag you into something you don't want to do. But effectively, at the end of the day, if we're picking a time, I would say sooner rather than later. If you're making a move in the property market, is the time to do it. So what can the mortgage team talk to you about? How much you can borrow. We can get you pre-approval. I can give you advice on different properties, apartments versus houses, townhouses versus this, upgrading houses. A lot of people upgrading at the moment, which is super interesting. Getting into your next property and purchasing investment property, all things property, debt, I'll always throw my opinion in on a property if you're talking to me about it anyway, booking a time.
Yeah, the other one is sometimes people make assumptions with how far away they are. And Mike says, Mike can we out in like 5-10 minutes and just be like, yeah, you're right. You're completely far away. But a lot of the time, people can actually go and do stuff now.
It's one of my favorite conversations to have is when people are like, I think I'm about 2 years away. I'm like, you can do it now.
Cool. And if you go, I love the sound of these guys' voices, I would like to listen to them more often. Checks and Balances is our podcast that comes out 3 times a week on a whole range of money subjects. I think we've done something like 300 episodes now. Go check it out. Spotify, YouTube, Apple. Make sure to, if you already watch it, would love some reviews on there as well. Some nice comments.
All right. So let's kick into the Q&A. All right. First question. So due to the financial advice rules, a Dave Ramsey style talk show can't happen in New Zealand. I don't know who Dave Ramsey is.
I do know who Dave Ramsey is. And David, this is actually my life dream. Ravi, if I could get a talk
this
show,
is not that guy you keep showing me.
Yeah, he starts talking about Jesus. I'm not going to talk about Jesus, but starts talking about all sorts of things and goes, oh my Lord, you have $300,000 in credit card debt and $400,000 in car loans or whatever. I would love to do that, but let's move
David, I think it's actually one of the things I'm most grateful for with the financial advice rules in New Zealand is that James can't drag me into that style of podcast.
Cool. Yeah, here we are.
With term deposit interest rates dropping, what is the best way to invest cash for the short term as your current term deposits mature, say 6 to 12 months? Where the money is required to purchase a house soon, should I put it in bonds, ETFs, or refix on the TD? Jimmy.
So they need the money in 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, so in TDs.
Yeah, I would probably go like in just like a savings account or like
cash?
There's like cash funds that pay all right. The most important thing is liquidity. So if you put in a term deposit, you might not have the money. If you put it into an ETF or even a bond, there might not be as much money when you look to take it out. So really think short term, low risk.
Yeah. Again, you've got to think about the time horizon for the investment and then the risk that is appropriate for that time horizon. An ETF is not appropriate for a 6 to 12 month need.
Next question is one I run into quite a bit. So your advice is talking to people who have a 30-year time horizon. What general advice do you have for those who are 5 years out from retirement? That is very hard to do over a webinar.
Get a financial plan.
Yeah,
it's my general advice.
It's
Speak
far
to a financial advisor.
It's far more personalized. So it depends on, are you just going to fully retire? Are you going to reduce part-time? Do you have a mortgage? Are you going to downsize your home? What other investments do we have to work with?
Yeah.
I would definitely book a time just to have even a general chat would be a good idea.
Because that really depends on your situation with the 5 years. What do we have to achieve? We might not actually have to achieve anything with 5 years through it. You might be completely fine and we're just selling down some assets and shifting them into a more liquid investment. Some people have to achieve a lot in 5 years and we just need to get cracking and get on with it.
Cool. Next one's a good one.
Cool. Out of interest, what do you guys invest in personally? Property? Yeah, we do invest in property. James and I bought 12 units in Upper Hutt last year. It's quite a bit of property. We renovated that. As James said, made about $1 million on it in a few 10 weeks. Yeah.
He says that very casually. It was quite complicated.
It's very complicated. We do all invest in property. Obviously, we have KiwiSaver, invest in shares, although we tell people not to.
Yeah, I don't have it. Well, I got a little bit of.
I don't invest in crypto.
No, neither do I. I mean, the big thing for me, right, is so fundamentally what we believe is pay down personal debt, buy property. When the property's mortgage is paid off on your own home, then you invest into shares. The stage I'm at, which is the same stage Mike's at, is we're paying down the debt on our own home. We're leveraging up and buying more properties. We bought these 12 units in Upper Hutt. We plan to buy another project pretty soon.
Yep. And the other thing we invest in, business. So James and I both own part owners of Lighthouse Financial Services. So we invest a lot into that business, right? Because again, it's something you're generating an income off of. So yeah, we invest in quite a bit of stuff. We're not going to talk to you about crypto and shares. That's not our jam.
Cool. Next question is from Michael. Is it possible to borrow more than 70% against an investment property as security for another investment property?
Yes, it is.
New build?
Depends on the property type. So new builds are exempt. But you can't borrow up to 80%. You can only borrow 80% to purchase. um, there are, got to remember if there's still out there, there definitely were products in the market where you could go to 80% across the entire portfolio. That lender has shut. I'm pretty sure another one still does it. So
Can you put your thumb down? It keeps thumbs up. Yeah, thank you.
okay, cool. Yes, it is possible. It's not at banks. They're second tier lenders or specialist lenders, and some asset classes are exempt from those rules. Yep.
Cool. Next one is the recording. I missed the first
Is it recorded?
30 minutes.
Yes, and we'll send it out.
Where were you, Daryl? We were waiting for you. Next one. For a 2 to 3 year time horizon, any general advice on where to invest lump sum for a target return of 15-20% per year, or is it too ambitious? I feel like you have not listened to the webinar. It is not about short-term returns. It's about thinking about it over the long term. So really the answer is that's gambling, as nobody knows what will happen over short periods of time. Really, if you have under a 3 year time horizon, you should be keeping your money in cash.
Yeah. 15 to 20%. There was a Hawk Tour coin.
Bitcoin,
yeah.
Bitcoin. Okay, next one. Mike, what are your interest rate predictions for the year?
They're going down.
Gold and timber.
Yeah. How much they'll go down by depends on a lot of different factors. We saw the price of money drop 50 basis points on a short-term overnight swap over like the last 4 or 5 weeks. It's bounced back about 15 basis points just off the back of some news out of the States. So the official cash rate does influence the price of money. It is not the price of money though. So yep, the official cash rate will keep coming down. Interest rates will keep coming down. I predict your 1 year fixed rate is probably about 5% by the end of the year.
Give me a 4.99.
Nah, 5. There you go. But again, when you're thinking about what to do with your home loans, what interest rates are doing is not just what you consider. It is, what is the market doing for interest rates? What are my plans? What's the cash flow pressure on the household like? What do I want to do in the next 6, 12 months? How quickly am I paying it down? So I need flexibility. Speak to a mortgage broker.
Cool. Daryl said he was in a meeting, which is why I was late.
Okay.
Which is, I knew Daryl would be doing something important. Mike, put your thumb down. Can you recommend a good budget? I like how you put your hands under the table. Keep your hands above the table, Mike. Yeah. Can you recommend a good budgeting software? PocketSmith is what we use with our clients. I think it charges like $12 a month or something like that. And the great thing about PocketSmith is, and there's a few other versions as well, you can line a spreadsheet. PocketSmith is pulling live transactions, and you set a budget and you work out how close you actually are.
Why does it not do it when you make hand gestures? Anyway, cool. What is the sweet spot in terms of paying down your owner-occupied mortgage and then beginning to look at an investment property? Don't necessarily have to fully repay the owner-occupied, do we? No, you don't need to fully repay the owner-occupied, and that's something that people often get mixed up on. They go, I haven't paid down all the debt yet, so I'm not going to buy that investment property. Look, what is the sweet spot? How long's a piece of string? It really depends on how much cash you've got, how much equity you've got, what's the cash flow like in the household, your risk appetite. I was speaking to a couple yesterday. We were refixing. They're thinking about an investment property. They're in a phenomenal position. They are attacking debt like they're doing everything correct. And we started talking about investment properties, and they're like, our risk profile, we're just really not sure about it. We want to pay everything off first. So, I'm saying to them, I think you should do it now, but they're like, we don't want to. So, again, there's no sweet spot for everyone. That's similar to everyone asking us, or when we get asked, what's the sweet spot for savings? How much of my salary should I be saving? It is completely different for, someone starting out living at home with their parents saving for a house versus, a single mom with 2 kids or something like that. So, that type of advice, it's really easy for me to give you a general answer. That is the type of kind of personalized financial advice that a financial advisor would give you.
Yeah. If I was to give you like some high level numbers, say if you bought like a new build townhouse in Auckland for like $700,000, you're going to be topping that up. Let's just plan on like 7% interest rates to make sure things can change. You're probably saying you're going to have to top it up by like $2,000 a month. So if you've got the equity, that's a great thing to do, because say a $700,000 house increases 5% a year, that's $35,000. You're putting in $24,000. It's like a 50% return on your money. But the way people got a lot of trouble was going interest rates are 2 or 3%, or they might even be 4%, not too far into the future. You've just got to go, when they're higher, am I still going to be okay? Do I have an emergency fund?
100%. Cool.
There was two other things in the chat.
Okay.
One was pretty sure those names were nicked from The Sopranos. You watch Sopranos?
Never seen it.
Yeah. Larry Linger. Old mate Larry. And the other one is, what's an ETF? Ravi wrote exchange traded fund. It's really finance is full of jargon. It's really just going a basket of shares. So you might be investing into like 1,000 companies. So, I mean, your Kiwi saver is investing into lots of shares.
Yeah.
Nothing too complicated.
And it can be traded over an exchange.
There you go.
Cool. All right.
Okay. So, one more question. Is it telling us we're pretty?
Cool. Okay. You mentioned earlier that I recognize this name. I don't know why I recognize this name, but I do.
Be awkward if it's a client.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned earlier there's a lot of interest in commercial. I was super inspired by the Scott O'Neill podcast regarding commercial property investing with Rethink. Is this something you recommend to clients? Absolutely. So I will admit, James and I were both a little bit in the dark on commercial property up until we started working with the Rethink team. James and I aren't going to give advice on things that we don't know about. We've since learned quite a bit about commercial property. And, to be honest, a lot of the misnomers that people have about commercial property is that, you don't get the capital gains and it's more complex and you more risk for loss and these sorts of things. Yep, it is a little bit more complex. The Rethink team are really good at taking the complexity out of it. From the lending side of things, everything costs a little bit more and you get a little bit less, right? So instead of 70%, you might get 60% or 65% loan to value ratio for the property. Instead of a home loan interest rate, it's going to cost you a little bit more. So about 1% on top of those home loan rates, 1% and a bit. You're going to get charged a fee on the mortgage application from the bank. So there is a little bit more complexity to it, but to be honest, we recommend commercial property to clients, and we always send them through the Rethink team.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a first property, just because I talked to somebody out of it today. Because if you don't have a tenant, you're carrying this debt, you're in lots of trouble. Probably want to build with a bit of residential first, and then pivot to commercial a little bit later.
Recommended a commercial property as someone's first property investment the other day, and I stand by my recommendation because of what they wanted out of it, then their timeline. They have owned property in the past. It's just their first investment property.
They got a lot of cash flow.
Anyway.
Okay, all right, we're all done. 2025. There is heaps of time to get things done this year, but you really need to get moving in Jan because it'll all go by. 2026 will be here before we know it. So make sure you set a good financial plan. A great first action is to make sure that you subscribe to our podcast, give it a review, give us a like, and we'll catch you next time.
I can't even get to do what I want
to do. What the hell?
Cheers.